This is our meals series where I teach you how I use the basic ingredients that I bring into my house and I make a variety of different meals. We actually started this series at the beginning of January 2025 and it has just been named our meals series, and this is video number 22 in the series, but it's also where I get to share a little bit of my life and vlog a little bit. If you're just meeting me, my name is Amy Cross and this is The Cross Legacy, where I teach you how to save money on groceries. Our grocery budget is $135 per person, and we just moved into a new house in September, and our grocery budget has remained the same even though we have lots of people that are visiting and lots more family meals. We also post all of my grocery hauls here on the channel, so make sure that you're checking that out. The grocery hauls normally go up on the channel within 2 to 3 days after I went grocery shopping, where these videos come out every 2 weeks, but it's about a month after when we actually ate the meal. This video starts on November 1st, and it has been 2 weeks since I went to the grocery store. I had actually made a beef stew earlier in the day on Halloween, and then after we had 500 trick-or-treaters here Halloween night, then we ended up sitting down in our cow costumes and had some of that beef stew. But the next day, it was so beautiful out, just a beautiful 65 degrees out in November. We're not used to weather like this. And we were able to go and spend the entire day, and we planted a ton of tulips all day. Since we stayed outside so much longer than I was planning on it and enjoying every second of it, we decided just to warm up that beef stew and have that for dinner. I had made a large pot of this because we knew our kiddos were going to be over on Halloween night and over throughout the weekend. And so I made sure that we had extra, and anything extra after we had it that second night, I put into glass jars, and those went into the freezer that we can warm up in the coming months. This was a freezer meal that I pulled out of the freezer. We had some Tuscan chicken that I warmed up, and then with that I blanched some green beans that I had in the refrigerator. Again, it's been 2 weeks since I went to the grocery store. And with the green beans, I always love to have a little bit of bacon, and we had some extra leftover bacon for breakfast that we had with the green beans and Tuscan chicken, and it was really delicious and only took a few minutes. And then with the bacon, I had saved some of the bacon grease, and I made some of my hot bacon dressing that I have over spinach salad. Mike had to go to a meeting over on the Westside, the west side of Washington, so I got to go with him and hang out in the hotel. If you don't know, it actually takes many hours on the computer every single day to run all the things with the Cross Legacy to make sure that we're getting videos out and things on social media and the blog. We have a team, but it still takes a lot of time that I'm dedicating every single day. And it's not always in the kitchen. A lot of my day is spent behind the computer. And something I personally love to do is answer everybody's comments. I make sure no matter how busy I am, twice a day, I sit down morning and evening, and I make sure that I've answered all the comments that come across that I can see. Sometimes YouTube blocks them and I don't see them right away, but I truly do care about helping you save money on groceries. While we were over there, we had dinner with Ryan. He was like my dad that lived across the street from us for almost 20 years. And so it was really lovely to get to see him and spend time with him. We text each other every day, but to be able to give him a hug and to see him in person was really great. I have not ever went 2 months without seeing him in the last 20 years. When we got back home the next morning, I made some French toast, and I made sure to make that with the heels of the bread. It seems like we don't mind eating French toast that is the heels, but we don't necessarily grab that to make a sandwich. So it's a great way to make sure that we don't waste anything. I always laugh because I always flip it over when I put it on the plate, so people don't even realize it's the heel. We get half of a beef, still using that same grocery budget every 2 years. And so I have beef in the freezer, and I actually pulled out some steaks. It's kind of funny, steaks isn't something that I normally gravitate towards because I like making things that I can have leftovers with. So for this night, we had some steaks. I made some roasted beets with that, which was lovely to use some seasonal produce. And then we had some broccoli casserole that was frozen that I was able to pull out of the freezer and warm up. When I made the steak, I also took a couple extra extra minutes and I grilled up some mushrooms and onions to top on top of it. So this was actually my kiddo, but I get to talk about it. But they got a free turkey from work, and when they went to go put it in their freezer, they realized that they still had the carcass from last year's turkey in the freezer. And so they brought it over to Mom, and I was happy to make turkey stock that we made some for us, and then I gave them some too. But that way it got used up. But it's a really good reminder, if you have put things away in your freezer to make stock, that you need to actually make the stock. And turkey stock is my favorite all year long. So I love that I have a little bit here before Thanksgiving. They have some, and then I can make a bigger batch after Thanksgiving. Part of that stock I did put in a half-gallon jar, and I put that in the refrigerator that I'm going to use up in the next couple days. And then I put some in quart-sized jars that I put in my freezer and then my kiddo's freezer. I made some chicken breast in my Instapot. I was able to make enough for what I was making for dinner tonight, and then I made 2 more containers of shredded chicken to put into glass containers that I put in the freezer, and that way we can pull it out another night. And then with that turkey broth, I made chicken noodle soup with that shredded chicken. This was one day that I was just happy as a clam to be hanging out in the kitchen and really didn't have anything else I needed to do. So I ended up baking some rolls, and with that I made a double batch. So I formed them into rolls and then put them into the freezer so I can pull them out for many other nights, and they're all ready to go. And this night I pulled out containers that I had mashed potatoes, peas, and meatloaf in, and I just added a little bit more sauce to the meatloaf when I was warming it up, and a little bit of butter to the mashed potatoes, and warmed that up in the oven, and we had a quick and easy dinner. So in this time in the calendar is normally when I'm about 3 weeks since I went grocery shopping, and I'm trying to use up anything that is in the refrigerator that needs to be used up. And that October grocery shopping haul that I did, I had bought a ton of peppers that I haven't used yet. So I spent a little bit of time making sure those were all chopped up, the ones that needed to be used up, and I put those into the freezer, into bags. And I normally mix the colors when I put it into bags, so I have a little bit of green and red and yellow, and then sometimes I'll also add onions to it. But this time it was just peppers, and I was able to put those away in the freezer. Getting peppers during harvest season when they're at their lowest price of the year, and being able to put those away in the freezer to use for recipes, I have found that it not only saves money, but it also saves a lot of room in my refrigerator. So when I'm going into now November and December and thinking about what needs to all fit in my refrigerator, I don't have to buy as many bell peppers. I only get the ones that I need for fresh eating, and anything that I'm going to add for my cooking recipes, I can just pull out of the freezer. And I was getting to spend some extra time in the kitchen and doing what I wanted to do because Mike was over with who we call our brother-in-law. It seems like we have a lot of family members that are like family to us. And he was staying for a few days to help us revamp the basement unfinished area to make it cleaner and safer and have a new floor. So while Josh was here, even though he might not eat very many vegetables, I did sneak him in some hidden vegetable brownies that he loved. So in typical Amy fashion, I'm always trying to sneak in as much nutrients and vegetables and stretching that grocery budget as much as I can. And it was kind of funny because he came in saying the kitchen smelled so good the next day as I was cooking zucchini. If he would have realized it was zucchini, he probably wouldn't have been as excited for what was cooking in the pot. But I ended up using those frozen tomatoes that I had put in the freezer, and I made a big batch of spaghetti sauce. This I let cook on the stove all day long, and then the last 2 hours of it, I put Italian sausage in the pot. So the Italian sausage just soaked up all the flavor from the spaghetti sauce, and it was delicious. And for this, we had the entire family over because they were excited to see him. And we had pasta with some broccoli on the side, and that shelf-stable sourdough bread that I get, that I added garlic butter to it to make it garlic bread. And I was able to not only put some of that sauce away in my freezer, but I was able to send some home with all of my kiddos. And somebody had just asked me in a comment a couple days days ago why I wasn't canning my spaghetti sauce right now, and it's because that pantry isn't done and we haven't unloaded all of the boxes yet. So all of my canning equipment is still boxed up. But I think it's a really good reminder to show that you can also freeze items like this and be able to use it later. The next night we had sloppy joes. I had just pulled out some ground hamburger out of the freezer and defrosted that, and with that I snuck in another zucchini with the onions, and then we added some peppers to that, and then I just used some of that spaghetti sauce to make the sauce. And I made sure to grab some of those hamburger buns out of the freezer that I had. I'm trying to use up those hamburger buns out of the freezer to make some space before we start putting Thanksgiving items in there. I pulled out some of those frozen enchiladas that we had in the freezer, and I ended up making a little bit more enchilada sauce. This I just made homemade from tomato sauce with some seasoning. And then with that, I made some Mexican rice. Again, I made that just from white rice that I ended up adding some of that enchilada sauce to, and then it made it into Mexican rice. And then we also had a fresh avocado that was over a month old at this point. So I'm trying to use up all of the fresh produce that I have before I go to the store in the next couple days. And keeping with that theme of trying to use up everything I can before I go grocery shopping again, we ended up having a chicken Caesar salad that we used up the last of the lettuce and the last of the cucumbers, and we had some apples that we added to that. And we had chicken strips with Caesar salad, which made a quick and easy meal. This is my zero waste produce guide that has 75 produce items A to Z and how we have zero waste. It has all of the tips on how to keep produce items fresh for weeks. And then we also have our grocery planner. This comes in 5 different covers. I love that this covers 6 months at a time, so you can keep track of your fall and winter meals, and then again switch over to spring and summer meals. And it has 5 different covers, so you can pick whichever one works best for you. But this is how I'm able to keep track of all the ingredients, things that I have in my freezer, meals that I'm making, and all of those grocery budget items that I keep track of in my planner to really focus on making sure that I'm saving money for our family. So this is a little bit of a shorter video because we were out of town for those first few days of it. This does push us all the way to the 4-week mark since we went to the grocery store. If you're new to this channel, make sure that you're hitting subscribe. And this meals series is a really great playlist to get to know us a little bit more and to see all of the meals that I've made over the course of a year. So since this started in January last year, it really also gives you an idea of the seasonal meals that I make during the winter time.